En esta ocasión de la serie de monográficos sobre la historia oculta, vamos a hablar del caso del asesinato de John Fitzgerald Kennedy, centrándonos un poco en su vida, el contexto histórico y las consecuencias que tuvo para la historia de Estados Unidos y por ende del resto del mundo. La razón por la que Kennedy fue asesinado podemos encontrarla en algunos autores como Fletcher Prouty, que en sus libros JFK o El equipo secreto pudo delinear que el origen pudo estar en la intención del presidente de Estados Unidos de poner fin a la guerra del Vietnam y al reino de la CIA en el contexto de la política internacional. Esto nos da lugar a dos preguntas, teniendo en cuenta la participación de destacados caballeros de la Orden en Malta en la dirección de la CIA y del Estado Mayor de la Defensa. ¿Quería Roma la guerra de Vietnam? ¿Controlaba Roma la CIA? Podemos encontrar caballeros de la Orden de Colón, dones de la mafia, incluyendo destacados miembros del FBI. Todo esto ocurrió bajo el pontificado del Papa Pablo VI. La guerra de Vietnam fue llamada la Guerra de Spelling. Muchos de los soldados americanos participaron bajo el comando de las fuerzas americanas con el general William Westmoreland, un católico romano, miembro del CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, Consejo de Relaciones Exteriores, posiblemente caballero de Colón, y un buen amigo del cardenal Spellman. Westmoreland fue agente del cardenal Spellman. Un supervisor de Westmoreland fue también el chico del cardenal Spellman, Lyndon Baines Johnson, vicepresidente de Kennedy y su sucesor. Destacado masón del grado 33 y buen amigo del director del FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. ¿Por qué quería Spellman un control sobre la Universidad de Fordham? La Universidad de Fordham es una universidad privada de la compañía, ubicada en Nueva York y perteneciente a la Asociación de Universidades Jesuitas. Si bien el control era parcial por parte del cardenal, hasta 1952. Durante siglos había existido una presencia destacada de la compañía en Vietnam. Y llegó un momento, en el que decidieron que alrededor de 1 millón de budistas debían ser convertidos. Con la toma de Camboya por Pol Pot, así como regiones de la actual Tailandia, hubo una mayor dificultad de la llegada de efectivos de las antiguas colonias francesas, efectivos occidentales, así como determinadas tensiones con las misiones de la compañía. Destacados líderes, por otro lado, comunistas, facilitaron en China la llegada de la compañía, caso de Mao Zedong, algo que no ocurrió en el caso de Pol Pot. Otro tema que vamos a tratar y analizar es la posible relación o vínculos entre el comercio de la droga, la heroína y el opio, así como los cárteles colombianos, con el aparato del Estado profundo norteamericano. El comercio del opio había durado siglos, dentro de China y fuera de China, junto al comercio de seda, piedras y especias. Desde diferentes medios, como Gary Webb y algunos otros autores, se ha especulado que la guerra de Vietnam tuvo también la finalidad de consolidar y controlar determinados mercados opacos relacionados con el narcotráfico, que posteriormente en las futuras décadas inundarían cada ciudad americana con drogas. Destaca el llamado Air America o puente aéreo. Hay una película que con sentido del humor lo analiza. Pero sobre todo interesa saber los vínculos de la familia de la mafia traficante con Santos traficante a través de Miami. En Europa la conexión sería a través de Marsella, con la mafia corsa, la mafia marsellesa y la mafia napolitana. Sobre todo trayendo la droga a través de barcos en la costa turca. Destaca la participación en aquella época en el amplio campo de la política de Jean-Baptiste Janssen, un gran defensor de la doctrina, o por así decirlo, de expansión del imperialismo norteamericano. La segunda razón, por tanto, del posible asesinato de Kennedy no es ya una cuestión de que quisiera poner el reinado de la CIA, sino sobre todo también de que fue traicionado por la CIA en la invasión de Bahía de Cochinos. Castro no tuvo una oposición real. Esta fue la misma táctica que usaron la CIA y la KGB, trabajando juntas bajo las órdenes de Angleton en la Revolución de Hungría, por ejemplo. Kennedy, humillado, como consecuencia, firmó un memorándum con el cual arrebataba todo el poder a la CIA, entregándose a una junta de jefes militares de su propio gabinete. Toda la CIA fue construida por los Caballeros de Malta y por miembros de sociedades secretas como Skull and Bones. Destaca la película El Buen Pastor. El llamado padre de la CIA, William Joseph Donovan, Will Bill, era irlandés, oficialmente católico, pero sobre todo perteneciente a la Orden de Malta como caballero, lo cual no es un requisito ser católico para pertenecer a esta orden. La CIA, por lo tanto, se podría entender que es un brazo más de la inteligencia de organizaciones y órdenes ligadas al Vaticano. William Casey fue un caballero de Malta. Angleton fue un caballero de Malta. La comunidad de inteligencia se vio amenazada por el memorándum redactado por Kennedy. En consecuencia, como Kennedy intentó poner fin a la CIA y a la guerra de Vietnam y a la hegemonía de la impresión de moneda de la Reserva Federal, nos cabe pensar que pudo haber una relación causa-efecto en que este presidente católico, el primero de Estados Unidos, con un pasado familiar vinculado a la mafia, cuyo padre se había enriquecido con el tráfico de alcohol durante la ley seca, y posteriormente como embajador y diplomático de Estados Unidos en Alemania, bajo el régimen nazi, siendo el artífice de los acuerdos de Múnich de 1938 para conseguir una paz en Europa, nos cabe hacer la siguiente pregunta. ¿Pensaban que controlaban a un candidato a la Casa Blanca que les pudo salir rana o rebelde, y es lo que hoy vamos a tratar aquí. Vietnam fue un campo de pruebas para las armas de última generación, incluyendo armas biológicas, napalm y nuevas formas de hacer la guerra que serían más tarde explotadas en futuros conflictos como el de Irak, Afganistán, el Golfo, Yugoslavia. De acuerdo con el escritor Tom Kunkel, el hijo de Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr., iba a desvelar públicamente muchas de las averiguaciones respecto al asesinato de su padre, motivo por el cual, presuntamente, desapareció. Al llegar a la Casa Blanca en 1960, se cernía sobre Europa el fantasma del comunismo, con el muro de Berlín, la República Democrática Alemana, el Berlín Oriental, el Berlín Occidental y sobre todo la aniquilación nuclear. Cabe destacar el conflicto de los misiles de 1962 en Cuba con la Unión Soviética. 13 días en los que se decidió el destino de la humanidad, que afectaron profundamente al presidente de Estados Unidos al enfrentarse a esa crisis. La crisis de Cuba no fue la primera vez que Kennedy se enfrentó a una hipotética guerra. A los pocos meses de su presidencia, sus generales y almirantes del Estado Mayor conjunto le hicieron saber que la guerra nuclear total estaba sobre la mesa por la crisis de Berlín, mientras los soviéticos construían el muro, y que a menos que los soviéticos se retiraran de Berlín y de Cuba, no habría posibilidad de una paz. Por otro lado, los embajadores de Khrushchev pedían a Kennedy retirar los misiles Júpiter de Turquía. La línea dura del Estado Mayor conjunto se basaba en el lanzamiento de 170 bombas atómicas de hidrógeno solo en Moscú, destacando también otras ciudades europeas que ya habían sido fuertemente atacadas durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, como por ejemplo Berlín. El resto de ciudades soviéticas, junto con la de China y Europa del Este, debían ser declaradas según los almirantes del Estado Mayor y generales del Estado Mayor. Cientos de millones podrían haber sido los muertos. Consternado, JFK, por su voluntad de destruir la parte del mundo, trató de obtener más control presidencial sobre cualquier territorio y promovió un segundo plan con un uso limitado de armas atómicas. Los jefes militares del Estado Mayor estaban cada vez más hartos de Kennedy, cuando buscaban caminos que se alejaran de la destrucción, cuando él buscaba caminos que se alejaran de la destrucción mutua asegurada, MAT, como se llamaba irónicamente. No podían entender su reticencia a utilizar cualquier medio necesario para derrotar al comunismo. Lo que no sabemos es si posiblemente Kennedy, de alguna manera, descubriera que toda la Guerra Fría, la presunta rivalidad entre la Unión Soviética y Estados Unidos, no dejaba de ser un mero teatro de operaciones, una mascarada. Al final de la guerra, si los americanos incluso ganamos, dijo el entonces el general de la Fuerza Aérea Thomas Powell. Kennedy, enfurecido por los comentarios de sus asesores de seguridad nacional, desoyendo los consejos de Robert McNamara, ignoró repetidamente los planes de ataque nuclear en Europa y rechazó la invasión militar de Cuba, recordando la invasión de Bahía de Cochinos y el fracaso de la misma. Vietnam fue el último asunto polémico entre JFK y los militaristas antes de aquel fatídico 22 de noviembre de 1963. Según relata James Douglas en su libro JFK and the Unspeakable, John Fitzgerald Kennedy y lo inexplicable, Kennedy había reconocido el fracaso colonial de Francia en Vietnam y deseaba evitar la trampa. Edmund Gullion, un funcionario del consulado estadounidense, cuando JFK y su hermano Robert, de 22 años, visitaron Vietnam en 1951, ya le había alertado la imposibilidad del gobierno francés colonial de establecer una paz duradera. En 1951 le dijo: en 20 años no habrá más colonias, aquí no vamos a ninguna parte, le dijo Bouillon a Kennedy en aquel momento. Los franceses han perdido. Si venimos aquí y hacemos lo mismo, también perderemos por la misma razón. Los generales estadounidenses tenían otros planes, ya que no querían que el dominio del sudeste asiático cayera en manos comunistas, pero sobre todo intereses ocultos, donde la mafia tenía fuertes intereses en el tráfico de opio, heroína y otras drogas. Los avances comunistas de Ho Chi Minh en Laos y Vietnam alertaron al general Lyman Lemminster, presidente del Estado Mayor Conjunto, y prometió: si nos dan el derecho a usar armas nucleares, podemos garantizar la victoria. En una reunión, Lemminster y el general de la Fuerza Aérea Curtis LeMay volvieron a presionar a Kennedy para que realizaran ataques nucleares. Kennedy se marchó disgustado. Levantó las manos, miró a los generales y almirantes que quedaban en la sala del gabinete y dijo: esta gente está loca, según cuenta en el libro de Douglas. Conspiración monolítica y despiadada. La teoría de la conspiración se ha convertido en una frase a menudo utilizada por las cabezas parlantes de la televisión, liderada por James Warren, para investigar el asesinato de JFK, determinando que no había teoría de la conspiración. Sin embargo, JFK usó la frase conspiración monolítica y despiadada sin la palabra teoría, en un discurso pronunciado el 27 de abril de 1961 en el Hotel Waldorf Astoria de Nueva York. Una conferencia donde convocó a la prensa y describió una especie de conspiración, sin dar un nombre concreto ni identificado. La historia oficial nos dijo que un tal Lee Harvey Oswald, un pistolero solitario sin ninguna relación con el gobierno o los militares, había sido el único autor.
Remarks of the President to the American Newspaper Publishers Association, Waldorf Astoria Hotel, New York City, April 27, 1961.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate very much your generous invitation to be here tonight. You bear heavy responsibilities these days, and the article I read some time ago reminded me of how particularly heavily the burdens of present-day events bear upon your profession. You may remember that in 1851, the New York Herald Tribune, under the sponsorship and publishing of Horace Greeley, employed as its London correspondent an obscure journalist by the name of Karl Marx. We are told that foreign correspondent Marx, stone broke, and with a family ill and undernourished, constantly appealed to Greeley and managing editor Charles Dana for an increase in his munificent salary of $5 per installment, a salary which he and Ingalls ungratefully labeled as the lousiest petty bourgeois cheating. But when all his financial appeals were refused, Marx looked around for other means of livelihood and fame, eventually terminating his relationship with the Tribune and devoting his talents full-time to the cause that would bequeath to the world the seeds of Leninism, Stalinism, revolution, and the Cold War. If only this capitalistic New York newspaper had treated him more kindly, if only Marx had remained a foreign correspondent, history might have been different. And I hope all publishers will bear this lesson in mind the next time they receive a poverty-stricken appeal from a small increase in the expense account from an obscure newspaper man. I have selected as the title of my remarks tonight, "The President and the Press." Some may suggest that this would be more naturally worded, the President versus the press, but those are not my sentiments tonight. It is true, however, that when a well-known diplomat from another country demanded recently that our State Department repudiate certain newspaper attacks on his colleagues, it was unnecessary for us to reply that this administration was not responsible for the press, for the press had already made it clear that it was not responsible for this administration. On the other hand, I realize that your staff and wire service photographers may be complaining that they do not enjoy the same green privileges, the local golf courses, which they once did. It is true that my predecessor did not object, as I do, to pictures of one's golfing skill in action, but neither, on the other hand, did he ever be a Secret Service man. My topic tonight is a more sober one, of concern to publishers as well as editors. I want to talk about our common responsibilities in the face of a common danger. The events of recent weeks may have helped to illuminate that challenge for some, but the dimensions of its threat have loomed large on the horizon for many years. Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to prevent unauthorized disclosures to the enemy. In times of clear and present danger, the courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. Today, no war has been declared, and however fierce the struggle may be, it may never be declared in the traditional fashion. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger. And yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent. It requires a change in outlook, a change in tactics, a change in missions by the government, by the people, by every businessman or labor leader, and by every newspaper. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. Nevertheless, every democracy recognizes the necessary restraints of national security. And the question remains whether those restraints need to be more strictly observed if we are to oppose this kind of attack as well as outright invasion. For the facts of the matter are that this nation's foes have openly boasted of acquiring through our newspapers information they would otherwise hire agents to acquire through theft, bribery, or espionage. That details of this nation's covert preparations to counter the enemy's covert operations have been available to every newspaper reader, friend and foe alike. That the size, the strength, the location, and the nature of our forces and weapons, and our plans and strategy for their use, have all been pinpointed in the press and other news media to a degree sufficient to satisfy any foreign power, and that in at least one case, the publication of details concerning a secret mechanism whereby satellites were followed required its alteration at the expense of considerable time and money. The newspapers which printed these stories were loyal, patriotic, responsible, and well-meaning. Had we been engaged in open warfare, they undoubtedly would not have published such items. But in the absence of open warfare, they recognized only the tests of journalism and not the tests of national security. And my question tonight is whether additional tests should not now be adopted. That question is for you alone to answer. No public official should answer it for you. No governmental plan should impose its restraints against your will. But I would be failing in my duty to the nation in considering all of the responsibilities that we now bear and all of the means at hand to meet those responsibilities if I did not commend this problem to your attention and urge its thoughtful consideration. On many earlier occasions I have said, and your newspapers have constantly said, that these are times that appeal to every citizen's sense of sacrifice and self-discipline. They call out to every citizen to weigh his rights and comforts against his obligations to the common good. I cannot now believe that those citizens who serve in the newspaper business consider themselves exempt from that appeal. I have no intention of establishing a new Office of War Information to govern the flow of news. I am not suggesting any new forms of censorship or new types of security classifications. I have no easy answer to the dilemma that I have posed, and would not seek to impose it if I had one. But I am asking the members of the newspaper profession and the industry in this country to re-examine their own responsibilities, to consider the degree and the nature of the present danger, and to heed the duty of self-restraint, which that danger imposes upon us all. Every newspaper now asks itself, with respect to every story, is it news? All I suggest is that you add the question, is it in the interest of national security? And I hope that every group in America, unions and businessmen and public officials at every level, will ask the same question of their endeavors and subject their actions to this same exacting test. And should the press of America consider and recommend the voluntary assumption of specific new steps or machinery, I can assure you that we will cooperate wholeheartedly with those recommendations. Perhaps there will be no recommendations. Perhaps there is no answer to the dilemma faced by a free and open society in a cold and secret war. In times of peace, any discussion of this subject and any action that results are both painful and without precedent. But this is a time of peace and peril which knows no precedent in history. It is the unprecedented nature of this challenge that also gives rise to your second obligation, an obligation which I share, and that is our obligation to inform and alert the American people, to make certain that they possess all the facts that they need and understand them as well, the perils, the prospects, the purposes of our program, and the choices that we face. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security, and we intend to do it. It was early in the 17th century that Francis Bacon remarked on three recent inventions already transforming the world: the compass, gunpowder, and the printing press. Now the links between the nations, first forged by the compass, have made us all citizens of the world, the hopes and threats of one becoming the hopes and threats of us all. In that one world's effort to live together, the evolution of gunpowder to its ultimate limit has warned mankind of the terrible consequences of failure. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Reverend Mesa, Reverend Rock, I'm grateful for your generous invitation to state my views. While the so-called religious issue is necessarily and properly the chief topic here tonight, I want to emphasize from the outset that I believe that we have far more critical issues in the 1960 campaign. The spread of communist influence until it now festers only 90 miles from the coast of Florida, the humiliating treatment of our president and vice president by those who no longer respect our power, the hungry children I saw in West Virginia, the old people who cannot pay their doctor's bills, the families forced to give up their farms, an America with too many slums, with too few schools, and too late to the moon and outer space. These are the real issues which should decide this campaign, and they are not religious issues. For war and hunger and ignorance and despair, no religious barrier. But because I am a Catholic, and no Catholic has ever been elected president, the real issues in this campaign have been obscured, perhaps deliberately, in some quarters less responsible than this. So it is apparently necessary for me to state once again, not what kind of church I believe in, for that should be important only to me, but what kind of America I believe in. I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference, and where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president who might appoint him or the people who might elect him. I believe in an America that is officially neither Catholic, Protestant, nor Jewish, where no public official either requests or accepts instructions on public policy from the Pope, the National Council of Churches, or any other ecclesiastical source, where no religious body seeks to impose its will, directly or indirectly, upon the general populace or the public acts of its officials, and where religious liberty is so indivisible that an act against one church is treated as an act against all. For while this year it may be a Catholic against whom the finger of suspicion is pointed, in other years it has been, and may someday be again, a Jew, or a Quaker, or a Unitarian, or a Baptist. It was Virginia's harassment of Baptist preachers, for example, that led to Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom. Today I may be the victim, but tomorrow it may be you, until the whole fabric of our harmonious society is ripped apart at a time of great national peril. Finally, I believe in an America where religious intolerance will someday end, where all men and all churches are treated as equals, where every man has the same right to attend or not to attend the church of his choice, where there is no Catholic vote, no anti-Catholic vote, no block voting of any kind, and where Catholics, Protestants, and Jews, at both the lay and the pastoral levels, will refrain from those attitudes of disdain and division which have so often marred their works in the past, and promote instead the American ideal of brotherhood. That is the kind of America in which I believe, and it represents the kind of presidency in which I believe. A great office that must be neither humbled by making it the instrument of any religious group, nor tarnished by arbitrarily withholding its occupancy from the members of any one religious group. I believe in a president whose views on religion are his own private affair, neither imposed upon him by the nation, nor imposed by the nation upon him as a condition to holding that office.